Are you ready for some heavy engineering in the kitchen? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Secret Sauce. I'm James Ealing, and we are going to do some menu engineering.
Some restaurants are quiet, lose money, and the owner works 70 hours a week. Other restaurants are busy, profitable, and the owners work a few hours a day. What's the difference? They have a secret sauce. Join James from Marketing for Restaurants as he helps you come up with your recipe for restaurant success. Your secret sauce.
Hello everyone. Yes, I hope you're super excited about this topic. I am really excited. I love a good bit of menu engineering, not only because it's super fun, not only because it's super exciting, but because it so rarely gets done. There are so many aspects to this. We are going to have a ball going through all of the cool things that you can do with your menu to make it more fun, more popular, and more profitable. So, what is it that we are going to do? Well, this is probably going to take a couple of episodes. I like to ramble. We want to go into this in depth. It is something that I think is absolutely fundamental to the success of your restaurant. It is certainly something that I have seen done very poorly, and there's a high correlation between restaurants who do this poorly and restaurants that fail. So we're continuing on, in that theme of why do restaurants fail. This is one of those big things, I think, really important that you get a good understanding of it. So what I plan to cover is we're going to look at the definition that we use internally for menu engineering, the kind of thing that we want to get all of our team into the headspace of, and on top of that, our customers as well. We're then going to look at the 7 components that we like to think about as we move through the journey. And it's either going to be for a new restaurant, how do we actually look at that menu? How do you create one? Or is it something that you haven't done in the past, or you have done and you're going back to revisit it? Because, your menu, I feel, should be a living document. It should be a living process, because your customers are going to change. You're going to change. The industry's going to change. Your suppliers are going to change. And because of all of that change, your menu absolutely, positively has to change. I don't think you can have it as a static part of your business. If you do, you're not going to be getting more and more customers over time. And I'm talking, long term. The frequency with which you change your menu, that's up to you. It could be daily. You might have a little bit of excitement on the specials board. It could be weekly. It could be quarterly, with the seasons. You might do an annual revamp of it. But I think it's really hard to be one of these restaurants that's going to cook the same thing year in, year out. You need to be thinking about what it is that you're going to be doing differently. So what we're going to do is the 7 steps that I like to think about. The first one is your business plan, your marketing plan. I know I probably sound like a broken record like that, but an important thing to have those documents there. Obviously, they're not set in stone. They have to change, but you want to be having some part of a framework that you can go back to reference, to be your sort of North Star that you're going to be able to work with. Then we're going to look at creativity. Far too many people leave this out of the restaurant menu engineering process, and I think that is to the detriment of you, your restaurant, and your customers. Costing, boring, but absolutely fundamental to what it is that you do. I've worked with a few people in a few industries, and the restaurant industry is one of the few industries where people sell stuff and you say, how much does that cost to make? And they go, I don't know. And that's really bad, because it's a lot harder for you to cost things. There's the cost of time, there's the opportunity cost, as well as the food cost, which is your traditional way of costing the things out in your restaurant. Next, we're going to look at the Boston Consulting Group's matrix. It's something that I always think that is important to look at, because a lot of people sort of flick this up and they say, here's the BCG matrix. They don't really provide a lot of insight into what each of the roles are for the items in the matrix and how you actually quantify them in there. Every item on your menu should have a role to play, and this is why it makes it easy. The BCG matrix, I like it because it makes it easy to create that competition on the menu for each and every menu item to fight for its place. If they're not fighting for their place, then you've got a lazy menu, and you probably don't have the profitability to run a lazy menu every day. Next off, we're going to look at pricing. Now, so we've done quite a bit of work and now we're talking about pricing. And I think that that's a really interesting thing because there's a lot of different ways that you can put the pricing in on each and every one of your items. You don't want to be leaving literally too much on the table. You want to be getting the maximum amount that you can for the food and bev that you are selling. And there's a few interesting ways that we can sort of put that together. Then we're going to talk about menu design. Menu design's a really, really interesting thing. And I love it. You know, it's a little bit of an arcane art, but it's not that complicated. And we're going to go through some things and you're just going to be able to go, hey, that's pretty cool. Then the next part of it is the actual implementation of it and the monitoring of it. Because I think that the fundamental part is actually making sure that you're doing what needs to be done and that you're monitoring that. And so there'll be a couple of things that we're going to talk about that, which I think is really interesting and fundamental to the profitability part of the equation, this is literally where the rubber hits the road. Okay, so what is menu engineering? I like to describe it as a multidisciplinary approach to maximize the profits of the food and beverages sold in your restaurant. Now, there's a little bit in that. Okay, and I think that this is really interesting. So maximize the profits of the food and beverages sold in your restaurant. There's two components to that. There's how much money am I going to make if I sell, an item, if I sell a chicken vindaloo, if I sell a meat pie, if I sell a pizza. The other component of that is how many of those can I sell? Because we're not talking about imaginary numbers, it should cost me this much and I should make this much. We're talking about how much money is actually left in the restaurant at the end of the week after you've paid everyone's wages, you paid your lease and you paid you paid your supplies, you paid all of the crazy costs that you've got in running your restaurant. So one of the components, and this is a fundamental part of the menu engineering process, is how many customers come in. If you are selling boring stuff, if you are trying to sell exciting stuff to a market that doesn't want exciting stuff, if you are selling exciting stuff to an excited market, but that market isn't excited by what you've got that's exciting in your restaurant, then you're not going to sell that much. You certainly might make a lot of profit per menu item, but you're just not going to be selling as many of those menu items as you could be. This is something that I want to come back to repeatedly as we go through that process, because of the fact that your food is a salesperson for your business, right? It is the salesman. It's out there. It's spruiking for you. It is driving people to come in. And if you're not thinking like that, then you've got a lazy menu. You don't want a lazy menu. So let's go back to it. A multidisciplinary approach to maximize the profits of the food and beverages sold in your restaurant. Cool. What do we mean by multidisciplinary? Well, there's multiple things that you need to be thinking about when it comes to the menu. All right, so the first one, and this is the thing that most people get hung up on. It's like, oh God, this sounds really tricky. The first thing is the accounting side of it. So what is the contribution margin? What is the unit cost of each and every item that you've got on the menu? We're going to look into that a little bit more because it is more complicated than that. It's not just I bought something, threw it in the microwave, and 3 minutes later I sold it for something else and, I made 30% or 50% or 300%. It's more complicated than that. There's a whole range of factors that you want to be able to put in so that you can harmonize the way that your restaurant runs. The next one is psychology. What is it that people are thinking in their head? What is the product that you sell? I'm always saying, what is the product that you sell? You want to make sure, you want to be 100% certain of what the product is that you sell. Because if you're selling food, you're probably not going to be able to get the best price possible for it. Just a couple of quick examples around what it is that you sell. So in a fine dining environment, I might be trying to purchase the ability to impress someone. Now, I might be on a date. I might take my beautiful wife Tina out and want to impress her. And so part of the product could be the price that you pay. Look how much money I am spending on you. Now, in a business environment where you're taking clients out, that definitely can be a component of it. husband and wife are probably like, she's probably thinking, oh my God, think of all the money that we're spending here. More so maybe potentially on a date. Look how much money I'm spending on you. This is how much I value you. As the price becomes expensive and more people are paying to eat in that restaurant, then it sort of reinforces the fact that this is one of the best restaurants. Look at the price. Now, when you're thinking like that, that has a fundamental impact on the profitability of the restaurant. In a family restaurant, it is the opportunity for parents to be able to come and enjoy a meal without having to prepare it, without having to clean up, and potentially with the kids running off and doing some sort of crazy kid-like related thing, it might be 15 minutes or 30 minutes for the parents to sit down and actually talk as adults without the kids in their hair. Now, you should be pricing those 30 minutes accordingly, because it might be the only 30 minutes in the week that a couple of harried parents are going to get. Gluten-free. When you take the effort to explain why you cook gluten-free food and you have a special gluten-free menu, and this is something that I've experienced firsthand. So Donna, one of the people in our marketing team, she would come in and say, she would talk about, I would say, how was your weekend? And she'd say, oh, it was awful. We went to this restaurant for breakfast on Sunday, and we went there and I said, is there something gluten-free? And then they just got all snarky with me. And then they said, you can have that or you can have that, but it's a 20-minute wait. And my poor son, he felt really bad because he knew that we were waiting for his food to be prepared. We're not talking restaurant marketing. We're not talking work. All I've done is asked her how her weekend was. And the bad part about the weekend was that experience in the restaurant. Why is that? Because as a mother, one of her key responsibilities is to provide food for her children. And she failed to do that in a manner that was acceptable. Now, her son, he's used to needing a gluten-free menu. So he knows that it's not that simple when you go out to a restaurant. But as a parent, she feels that she has failed. Compare and contrast that. And I know, it was really interesting because she said, oh, it was amazing. We went out to this restaurant and they handed a menu to him, and he looked at me and said, what can I order? And I said, you can have whatever you like. And his eyes lit up. Really? Yes, you can have whatever you want. Now, so the menu, the restaurant that they went to, the menu I thought was pretty expensive. And this is the big kicker. This is the really, really big kicker when you think about it. She travelled 45 minutes to get there. She travelled 45 minutes on a Sunday morning to get breakfast. That was because of the fact that the thing that she was getting, the product that she was purchasing, was the ability for her son to order off the menu without any, oh, you can't have this, or it's going to take extra time to prepare that, or we're going to have to make a fuss over you, oh, what a drag. No, order whatever you like. And she said, he really loved it and they had some great food, and that became one of their regular places. So the food was expensive. Now, obviously there'll be a component of it because they're using gluten-free ingredients. Obviously, well, I'm pretty sure there's a component of it. The fact is that there are very few restaurants that provide that product. Because there's very few restaurants, then there's an oversupply, then they can charge more. That's the way that it works. That is menu engineering at its heart. So always try and think about the psychology that you've got in there, whether it's nostalgia, whether it's prestige, whatever it is that you're going to be putting in there, the psychology is so important. Next discipline that we're going to throw into the multidisciplinary approach that we're going to use is marketing. So the promotion, the price, the place, the product, all of those sort of things we're going to have a look at because they can be really important. And you can see there are some places that have just got everything sort of fit together really well. We want to be looking at those restaurants. We want to be looking at those examples so that you can get an idea of what it is to put all of that together in a nice way of doing it. The last one, and this is really interesting, and it's one of those things that I find it fascinating because you can look at the menu and go, nah, no menu engineering done here. The graphic design. What does the actual menu look like when you've got all of these crazy items on a menu? How are they laid out? How is the pricing conveyed? How are you shaped towards a decision? And I find this really interesting because places that haven't done their menu engineering, or they have done their menu engineering and they've done a really poor job of training people, I like to say, what would you recommend? oh, gosh, I don't know. You could try this, or you could try that, or I bought one of these out for someone earlier and it looked all right. Now, compare and contrast that with, let's see, so I went to a restaurant in South Carolina, Charleston, a few years ago. Yep, I found it. The Noisy Oyster Seafood Restaurant. Now, it's interesting. They've got a new website. I actually found it because it was referenced in my podcast. My podcast actually rated above them. When I was trying to find it. I couldn't remember the name of the place, but yeah, interesting. It looks like they've got a new website. The SEO is not great on it, and they don't have the Facebook pixel. That's a bit of sad times. It's probably something they need to work on. I remember asking the waitress what she would recommend. I was definitely going to get the alligator tails because I thought that would be completely epic. That was just something that appealed to me. I think it was a little bit touristy, but still, gator tails, that sounds pretty awesome. And she recommended some sort of seafood stew. And the way that she did it, the pricing, it was really kind of, you could just tell that that was one of their high margin items, something that they wanted to focus on selling. And I think that that's really good when you've got the front of house team aligned with the process of making sure that you're selling those high margin items. Now, what made me highly suspicious that this restaurant was doing some menu engineering? It was the description of that item on the menu. So it was highlighted around all of the other items there, and it was kind of like sort of meant that to draw you in there. It wasn't the most expensive item and so, for people looking at things that, oh, wow, that's a bit expensive, you sort of pull back to this, and then it's a stew. It probably is going to be pretty high margin, even though there is seafood in it. You're in a seafood restaurant, so you kind of expect that. It was one of those things where you could just tell there's a bit of strategy, a bit of thinking, and a bit of layout in the menu as well, reinforced by the waitress when she comes out. That's pretty cool. That's what you want to see, and that's what makes a profitable restaurant. Well, not entirely, but you're well on the way when you're starting to think like that. So let's get into the steps for menu engineering. Now, the first one, and really quite an important one, is your business and marketing plan. They are going to set out some of the left and right of arc that you can do as we get further down the track. So, it might dictate who your suppliers are going to be. It might dictate the limitations on your suppliers and the menu items that you're going to put in there. You don't want to be thinking about, dealing with an organic beef producer if you're running a vegetarian restaurant. If you have decided that that is what you're going to do, then meat is not a part of the equation. I know that sounds really quite obvious, but it is amazing, and that's an extreme example. I haven't seen too many cases of that. But it is always important to think about what it is that you're trying to do and who it is that you're trying to do it for and how that fits in with your business plan. I've seen mistakes made in various ways. So one way is, people who are doing QSR food, where they're really trying to focus on a price point and yet they're using premium product where they're clearly not marketing it as premium. And it's like, you probably could be getting this a little bit cheaper and not thinking about it. Flip side of that is fine dining where they're using, product that certainly isn't premium. And it's hard to really have a sustainable, unique selling proposition when people are going to realize that the ingredients that you're using aren't at the level that you're trying to be playing at. We start right at the business plan because this is where, a lot of your finances are going to come from. And people say, well, how does that equate with the menu? Isn't that more of the marketing plan? Well, the marketing plan is definitely a big part of it, but it's also got to be your business plan. So how much stock are you going to carry? How big is your wine cellar going to be? Is wine a significant part of your profitability mix? Do you have a decent wine cellar? Do you require a decent wine cellar? How big is your freezer? How big is your fridge? How much can you put in there? These are really important questions because how many items is it that you're going to have? What is their shelf life? We'll talk a little bit more to this when we look at costings, but I think that these are some of the things that you want to start teasing out. How are you going to afford the freezer that you need? How are you going to afford the burners that you need to be able to achieve the throughput that you want to get going? Do you employ cordon bleu chefs? Do you employ cooks? Have you got just kitchen hands? Or is it you and a microwave? What is the prep part of the business going to look like? what niches are you going to target? And I think this is a really important question. And I've mentioned it a couple of times. There's a restaurant that Lizzie loves. So Lizzie's my daughter. Now, it's called Funky's Restaurant in Toorak, and she loves it for one reason. And, it just does my head in that this is her favourite restaurant, and it does my head in that this is the reason that it's her favourite restaurant. They do fairy bread. So fairy bread, if you're not familiar with fairy bread, it's like hundreds and thousands, which is little bits of, coloured sugar on thickly buttered bread. Now, literally, and I think it's like $3 or $4. It's got to be one of the highest margin menu items ever in the world. Yep, I couldn't resist. I had to find out. So I downloaded their menu. Yeah, $4. So you get, for your $4, you get 2 slices of bread, some butter, and hundreds of thousands. Wow. Just wow. But she loves it. And why do we go there? Well, we go there because I just want to see a beautiful smile on my beautiful little daughter's face, and taking her to Funky's, that's the way that she reacts. She gets super excited about it. She already knows what it is that she's going to order. And yeah, it's too easy. So probably wouldn't be my first choice, but they've done a really good job of thinking about some of the things that they put on their menu and how those menu items interact with the niches that they are trying to target. Same with gluten-free, paddock to plate, organic, pescatarian, whatever the niche is that you want to sort of look at. This is where you want to be starting to think about those in your business plan and then in your marketing plan. Just as a quick aside, I'm planning on doing a podcast to look at some of the free tools that you can do to be able to do some market research around not only individual menu items, but also general cuisines, so that you can make sure that you've got a really good market fit for the kind of product that you're planning on delivering. When you look at the marketing plan, there's a couple of things that you want to be doing to try and deliver great food, great value, and great experiences to your customers. Product, place, promotion, price. So what is the product that you are going to be selling? And I think this is really important. I talk about it all the time. Another example is that I've got, when you go to a cafe, there was a cafe that in our old office, we upgraded to a new office a couple of years ago, but in our old office, we would go to a cafe when we wanted to have a meeting. We only had one meeting room. Now we've got a few more. We only had one meeting room. If someone was in that meeting room, we would go to the local cafe. The interesting thing was that there was lots of people in there having little meetings, so they'd go in, they'd buy a coffee. You can't just wander in and sit at a table. Everyone would buy their coffee. They might buy some lunch. But there were lots of people having meetings. And yet, it was really noisy there. They played music very loudly. And, the staff would be there. They'd be sort of bopping away to the music. They'd be having a great old time. And everyone else was just annoyed because it wasn't a great place to have a meeting because you had to speak really quite loudly. And this was one of those things. This is a place that didn't understand what the product was. They thought that they sold coffee. No, they sold tables where people could have meetings. That was what they sold. People went in and bought coffee, but they were only buying the coffee because that was where they were having a meeting. Place, 2 components there. What suburb am I going to be in? What street am I going to be in? The actual physical place of it. And of course, the big one that everyone talks about these days is it going to be delivered? Is it going to be something that is going to go straight into someone's house? It's a big question, and I know this is one thing that we spend a lot of time on the phone talking to restaurant owners about, trying to get that delivery mix right. What does that mean for your menu? Well, here's an interesting thing. And when we talk about what is the product that you sell, so when it's a delivered product, then it is convenience. That is the product that you sell. You need to be thinking about that. We know, and I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, that there was one restaurant who was doing quite well in Uber Eats. Obviously, they were losing quite a bit of money because they were just really struggling with the profitability of the entire system. Uber Eats, obviously, they're taking their 35% commission. What he did was he put his prices up 35%. Now, the interesting thing was he lost customers. Some of his customers were price sensitive, but the average order size went up, obviously, because he's put his price up 35%. It went up 35%. He was revenue neutral as far as that went. So he didn't lose a huge number of customers, The important thing that you've got to understand, though, is that the product that you're selling is convenience. It's the ability to have some food at home, not have to go out on a cold and rainy day. It's very cold and rainy here in Melbourne. So that's what you want to be thinking about. And that's you want to be pricing that accordingly. How many people are there who have not been putting their prices up on Uber Eats and have been missing out on all of that money? How many restaurants have closed? How many restaurants have closed because they didn't understand that fundamental pricing component? Because we know that, a lot of restaurants have closed. It's been like a scythe going through the industry, cutting down quite a few great restaurants because of the fact that they've been selling stuff without it being properly costed. So have a think about that place. Food truck is also a little interesting niche there as well, because obviously place is something that can change. It's generally quite hard to change where you're going to set up your restaurant. Promotion is a big one here, and this is where, your menu engineering, this is where you can get into the really, really funky type things. We work with some restaurants who are incredibly profitable because of the fact that they've been picked up by Instagram and really have been able to get quite a lot of free marketing. And on top of that, once you start to hit your straps with that, then you start getting free PR because everyone's talking about the new hot restaurant, and people, there's news agencies out there who want to be reporting on the new hot restaurant. So you can get some really big winners because they've come up with some menu ideas that look good on Instagram. So promotion isn't just about marketing and advertising. Obviously, sometimes it is. And for, probably 90% of restaurants, then there is a paid component to, how much you're going to put behind your Facebook ads or not. And, struggle because, you're competing in a world where people are putting Facebook ads out there. Hint, there's not as many restaurants who are doing Facebook marketing as there should be. We know that for a fact just because we see some of the results that people get with it. And when we talked about place, we obviously mentioned price in there, but I think that there is a lot of work that needs to be done around things like dynamic pricing, as well as testing the market to see that you're getting the best possible price that you can for the menu items that you've got there. Now, I'll include some links to some of the other podcasts that we've done where we've looked at things like the 4 Ps of restaurant marketing. But when it comes to your business plan, when it comes to your marketing plan, I do want to mention, just as a last thing, the secret sauce for so many successful restaurants. And now you might be the kind of person who's going to approach this like a businessman or woman approaches a business, where you're going to make rational decisions around the product that you're going to sell to the people who are going to buy it. And, it's all quite laid out, and you're taking an accountant's type approach to it. Not that there's anything wrong with it, and the restaurant industry would be a lot better if more people did that. But there is one thing that I think is really important when you're thinking about your business plan and your market plan, and that is your passion. Now that I think about it, we should probably put that as the 5th P for the 4 Ps of restaurant marketing. I might just write that one down. The passion is really, really important. You can fake some of the time for some of the people your passion, but it's really hard to keep it up day in and day out. And when the going gets really tough, there are days when the only thing that you've got going for you is your passion. It is just that blind faith that you are doing something for a good reason. That passion is got to feed into your unique selling proposition, the thing that in your marketing plan is going to make you unique, give you that competitive advantage. Sorry, that was the one other thing I meant to mention is unique selling proposition. I'll come back to that. But when you're looking at your passion, make sure that this is something that you're excited about. You've got to get out of bed every day and go into the restaurant. If you're not super excited to do that, no one in your team is going to be there to do that. And the messaging in your marketing is not going to be authentic, and people can smell that, and that's going to make it difficult for you. This is why I'm passionate about small restaurants, because I think that it's a lot easier to have that passion in a restaurant that is your own, not a franchise, not working in a big chain, but yours. This is your story, you're passionate about it, and you're passionate about the product that you produce for your customers. Time has eluded me, so I will come back and talk about unique selling propositions before, and that will be the last part of the marketing part. Then we are going to get on to costings, and that is going to be super cool. So that's about it. You have a super profitable week, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Want more customers for your restaurant, cafe or takeout? Every month, our marketing tools and information are used by thousands of restaurant owners just like you to help them find more customers and turn them into repeat customers. All of our tools and information is designed specifically for restaurant owners. We know you don't have a lot of time to spend marketing or learning complicated procedures, so our tools are quick and easy to use. If you're looking to increase your revenue and profits or want to work less hours, check out marketingforrestaurants.com.